Okay, this is the second part. This is Madison Nelson. The second part of what I was discussing in the last video. I'm on the book of Deuteronomy, and like I said, the book of life. It definitely explains, how life should be, the proper way to go, and everything. And like I said, as far as my life, I just felt the Lord calling me to come back to Him, and I'm definitely glad I did. And with that being said, I'll get right into it. So Deuteronomy, the book of Deuteronomy is basically, talking about looking back, not staying back, but moving forward, And in detail, he goes in different, it's different, basically it's different instructions set before him. Not like Leviticus, but it's a book kind of remembrance, like looking forward, looking back where you was brought out of or came from, and looking forward. So with that being said, the Lord, he laid his foundation down. Moses was still running the show. Aaron passed away, his brother, and one of the main things of God as far as this, he was basically showing, for those who are obedient, of course they'll get blessed. For those who are disobedient, they will get cursed. And basically, there's seasons for everything as far as in the Bible. And what I mean by seasons is, blessings. Of course, they say when praises go up, blessings come down. But there were, different. There's basically a certain time for everything, as far as in God's eyes. And it may not be on your time, but we're on His time. So one thing He can do though, He can take He does the impossible. So He can take a negative and turn it to a positive. So, for example, He turns curses into blessings. So things that were meant to harm you, He'll turn it into, for your good. And only God can do that. And He was talking about this in in Deuteronomy. Also, I'll read this shortly. He said, "And if you will faithfully obey the voice of the Lord your God, being careful to do all His commandments that I command you today, the Lord your God will set you high above all the nations of the earth, and all these blessings shall come upon you and overtake you if you obey the voice of the Lord your God. Blessed shall you be in the city, and blessed shall you be in the field. Blessed shall you be the fruit of your womb, and the fruit of your ground, and the fruit of your cattle, the increase of your herds, and the young of your flock. Blessed shall be your basket and your kneading bowl. Blessed shall be when you come in, and blessed shall be when you go out." So basically it's saying, if you basically try, don't lie, continue to, follow His plan for your life, and, just try your best to, live righteous, live how you're supposed to, because, people think, when you find Jesus, you're not supposed to, it's basically like, of course, you're not going to be the same person that you were before you met Jesus, because before you meet Jesus, you're in the world, basically, and of course He says, "Be not of the world," and lean not to your own understanding. So once you find Jesus, you'll see, it's you have a different perspective on life, a different outlook, and you'll start to, things to change for the better for you, Now, some people who don't know Jesus, who have good lives, and they're successful. But what I learned about success is the Lord looks at success is He looks at success is He looks at a person's heart. So that's how the Lord looks at success. And I didn't realize that. So you think about a lot of people out here who they're super successful as far as they're making good money and everything like that, and they living a good life in the whole nine. But I asked myself, do they have Jesus in their heart? Now it's not really a religious thing, because Christianity to me is more of a a relationship with God than a religion thing. So, but I asked myself, do a lot of people have success in their heart? Is God in their heart? And that's how Jesus, He looks at the inside of us anyway. So I kind of understand what He's saying with that. But that's basically what He means. You'll be blessed when you humble yourself and follow My command. And it's hard to, like I said. So Deuteronomy, I'll still, be making, Deuteronomy is a pretty long chapter, so I'll still be making some chapters, so I'll still be, doing some more videos, but basically talking about reconnecting with God's purpose. We all have a purpose for our lives, reflecting on God's person, what He said, refocusing on God's way, responding to God's promise. And that's basically, what I was just talking about. When He said blessed going in and blessed coming out, that means, He know who all of us are when we were at the womb, and the enemy does too. But with that being said, he has plans for us, and he gives us free will to do the right or the wrong thing. So, it's looking back and looking forward. Now, idolatry, he gave a warning against this. If you don't know, they worship I think it was in, it was in a different, I believe it was in the book of Leviticus or Numbers, where Moses was speaking to God on Mount Sinai, on the top of the mountain, and he was up there for a while, and the people began, the Israelites, they began to get a little, not panicky, but, a little frustrated. And what they told Aaron to do, Aaron basically made a calf and they worship an idol. And, of course, the Lord was pissed. And, he basically wanted to punish his people. He saved them from a ruthless, stubborn king. And he also, came through for them in a lot of times throughout the book of life. So Moses pleaded with him not to. And, and he definitely is definitely against that. Definitely against that, because that's what idolatry basically is. It's seeking security and meaning in someone or something other than God. So if you call yourself a Christian and you're not of the world, then you definitely don't, why would you worship another God other than God? The only true one God, the Heavenly Father. So as far as I'm concerned, one of the people I look up to, it just makes sense. Now, we all have different religions out there, but as far as I'm concerned, Jesus died on the cross, for our sins, right? He was crucified. But if you look in that tomb, it's empty. It's nowhere near. So that's proof right there, That's why. And that's one of the main reasons that I believe, He's buried and rose again. He's not there. That tomb is empty. So, there were commandments put in place. Basically, there was a new covenant put in place. Okay, and these are the 10 commandments. Basically, and this is what it says. Now, this is prevalent in society right now, and this is what's like kind of consuming the world right now that we live in. Even though there's still progress, but there's, like I said, America still needs to heal from the inside out. I'm the Lord your God. You should not have strange gods before me. He's talking about idolatry. You should not take the name of the Lord your God in vain. That means don't use his name in vain. Keep holy the Sabbath. Now, of course, that's supposed to be the day of rest. Some people do work on, Sundays. I'm not here to judge anyone or anything, but that's what it's supposed to be. Because sometimes I do, but that's supposed to be the day of rest. Honor your mother and father, and your days should be long. That's definitely something that stood in my mind for a long time, that my parents, taught me. They should not kill. You should not commit adultery. You should not steal. You should not bear false witness against your neighbor. You should not covet your neighbor's spouse. You should not covet your neighbor's goods. So that was mainly the commandments starting out, and Moses rewrote them again. So also what they had was in Deuteronomy, he talked about this. He set apart refuge cities. There was 3 different cities he set apart, which was east of the Jordan River. And God set these cities, he put these cities in place for those who accidentally, committed crimes. And, of course, if somebody commits a crime, in reality, they could go into witness protection, or, they some of them go into hiding, or, things like that. Or, of course, you do the crime, you do the time. But the Lord set up for those only who accidentally, committed a crime. That's what he set them for. So there were 3 different cities for that. And this is just a small map of what he was talking about. It was Kadesh, Shechem, and Hebron. And there were so many cities, back then. But this is basically what they were for, for those who accidentally, not just committing a crime and saying they did that, but just for those who, accidentally committed a crime. That's what it's for. Okay? Now, in Old Testament, Deuteronomy, what the Lord also said was, he said he would raise up, he talked about 2 prophets and false prophets. He said he would raise up for them, he would raise up for his Israelites a prophet like you from among their brothers. I'll put my words in his mouth, and he would tell them everything I command him. If anyone does not listen to my words, that the prophet speaks in my name, I will himself will call him to account. Mind you, Moses was getting older. So, of course, sometimes it's time to change the guard and to pass it on, pass the torch. If you think about, in sports, and politics and a little bit of everything. You know, they have those who get older, you know, it's time for them to retire, then move on, and then what? They pass the torch, you know. Kind of like, you know, how I went from, let's say Bill Russell, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, and all of them, to Michael Jordan, and, you know, all of them guys, to now we have LeBron James, Kevin Durant, and now we have the young guys, you know, like Lonzo Ball and things like that. So, you know, the torch is getting passed. But that's basically what he was saying. Now, you also have false prophets, and of course what that is, you know, those who come, you know, like they're from God, but they're not from God, you know, false prophets, you know. Now, mind you, the enemy comes in the form of light. So there's a lot of things out there, you know. So later down the line, you'll see that, if I'm not mistaken, who he was talking about was Joshua, because Moses was getting older, and you know, I'm not going to say he was getting ready to die, but he was getting older, and it was time for, you know, basically to change the guard. It was time for him to, you know, call it a wrap, basically. Okay, you know, the Lord used them for His purpose and His will. And like I said, we all have purposes and destinies. You know, and some of us fulfill them, and some of us don't. There are a lot of people sitting in the grave right now. You know, that could be the next fill in the blank. But you know, they didn't fulfill, you know, the destiny or the purpose. And some may have been of the world, and some may have been for Jesus. But it's just a shame to see that. You know, to go before your time when it's not your time, and not even to fulfill what you were meant to fulfill, or to step into what God had for you, you know, because they say, you know, when you leave, your life flashes before your eyes, but, you know, it'll be just a blessing, you know, to make sure you accomplish everything you were set out to on earth, especially to live the life that the Lord has for you, because, you know, it's definitely missing out. So with that being said, like I said, it's so much, and I'm going to have to read Deuteronomy again anyway. You know, I'm going to keep reading the book over and over again, the book of life, but I'm just saying, there's so much information and knowledge in Deuteronomy. That's one of my favorite, you know, books to read. But I'm going to go ahead and leave it off there, and I'll continue with Deuteronomy in the next video. Until then, everybody stay blessed, have a blessed day, and just be safe in this wicked world we live in, and keep God first.